IVM.
This is Storytellers and Story Sellers live on tape. You're listening to me, Vineet Kanabar, on the IVM Podcast Network. This is episode 101 of this podcast. And when I started this show, it was always about talking to story sellers, specifically people who work behind the scenes in bringing big stories to life and get their sort of mana, right? Get their wisdom and get their thoughts on stuff that I feel about the entertainment industry. Right? And today we've done this with over 99 other people, and we have Vivek Krishnani, Managing Director, Sony Pictures Films India, to come and talk about what is up in the world of big budget movies, what is up as we disrupt again and again this movie business. Vivek, so glad to have you on the show. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Vineet. I'm really happy to be here and, be a part of this. This is, an interesting experience for me, and, I hope we can have a great, fun conversation.
I'm so glad you've chosen to do your first podcast with me. I'm sure it'll be a good one for sure. Let me get you started by asking you the question that I set up in the intro. You've obviously been part of this industry in various avatars, right? Whether it's at a broadcast level or at a producer level as a distributor. You've seen the industry get disrupted and changed, become more, organized over the last 20 years. And then the pandemic hits, right? Which is
Correct.
Just an absolute circuit breaker of anything right? Of your organizational learning or your 20 years of... What have you unlearned in this period, sir, when it comes to the movie business? What were the things that you unlearned in this 2-year period after your stint here?
I think the whole thing about the movie business, Vineet, is that it's unpredictable, right? We can never be sure on the Friday whether the film will take an opening and the film will catch the fancy of the people, or whether, we kind of lose our shirt by Monday. So, it's always been the unpredictability of this business, which is actually, something that people are attracted to and something that people are also have been also impacted by adversely sometimes as well. The key point of this whole business is that, we always believe that we know what content consumers will like, and that's the gamble we play every Friday.
Right.
And the fact is that over the last couple of years, like you rightly said, the pandemic has changed consumer habits, viewing habits very drastically, because people have been exposed to content from across the globe. Forget across the globe, even within India, across various regions as well. So their taste palette for content has changed. And what has it taught us in this last couple of years is that, that we cannot take the audience for granted. The audience tastes have changed. We have to be mindful of what is the content that is going to excite audiences. The other thing about our business is what happened last Friday, you can never repeat next Friday in terms of content. So you have to keep thinking afresh. You have to keep thinking new. You have to keep thinking interesting content that will get people hooked on to the movie or the web series that you're creating. So I think the last couple of years has really pushed us back to the creative drawing board in terms of looking at what kind of content is going to be compelling enough for audiences, especially for cinema going audiences, to take the effort to come to cinema.
Right.
And what kind of content, they would find appealing even when it plays out on OTT, because OTT, where people have seen so many things, so many different genres, so many different kinds of content, and we have to constantly keep surprising audiences with good content. And I think that's the challenge that we have, that in this new environment, what as content creators we need to do to keep the excitement levels up amongst the entertainment-seeking audiences.
I love it. I think you put it in the simplest way possible, right? These are guys who are also bored. They've got access to everything in this world, right? They can watch YouTube content at the drop of a hat. They've got content in audio happening on podcasts. They've got content out the wazoo for that matter, right? What is it that storytellers and producers are putting out on screen that retains the sanctity of the Friday or weekend movie watch, right? Now, get a family out of their bums and go and watch something. And that's a very powerful, interesting challenge, right? Let me ask you this. It is a belief that this family trip or this weekend trip is the reason for the Indian viewers' resilience, right? We tend to keep going back. What was to you proof that yes, this is the Indian viewer is resilient, that movies are so deeply ingrained that if you build it and market it well, they will come and they will enjoy it. What has been some proof points in your experience? Some maybe a big release, maybe some time in the past couple of years.
In India, the favorite pastime of Indians is either going to a movie or going to a restaurant. Movies, as they say, are a religion in that sense. And cinemas are actually the place of worship. So, as people, we are kind of guided by this particular aspect very strongly when it comes to our entertainment choices. In the cities, obviously, we are spoiled for choice because you have multiple options. But when you look at, tier 2, tier 3 kind of cities, in India, movies do play a very strong quotient in bringing the family together because they are family outings.
Right.
And we have seen people come out in large numbers. Why go back to 2 years? Let's talk about just this year in the middle of December when we released Spider-Man. It kind of really took the cinemas by a storm. When we opened the advances, the advances, like the sites crashed. Book My Show
Right.
and all these sites actually crashed.
Right.
On day one itself, we sold about, like PVR sold about 1 lakh tickets. INOX sold about 1.5 lakh tickets. So the fact is that people were waiting to go back to cinema. And I think as like I said, for us, movies are our favorite pastime. And as long as you give them, compelling content and promising content. And I think the trailer for Spider-Man really proved that.
Right.
That, it was something that people really wanted to experience on the big screen. Also, the fact that it's one of India's most famous loved superhero and also has strong legacy.
Right.
But besides that, the offering of this new particular version, which basically the No Way Home,
Right.
which basically had something extremely new and refreshing to offer to audiences, really saw people coming back. So to your point, I think we have seen time and again that when there is compelling content, people are coming out to cinemas. We have seen that even in the past, at the start of 2021, when regional films released, films like Master that released, and again it really created huge number of people gathering up at the box office and houseful shows everywhere. So I think to your point, movies is part of our diet, and we need that weekly quotient in our diet, and that's something that we cannot do without. It's like a khurak, which is inbuilt into our system, and that needs to go in on a weekly basis. And we've seen that time and again, and not just now, from time immemorial. That when there were not so many cinemas also, but when films were running like for 40 weeks, 50 weeks,
Right.
It was incredible. Those times were like different when movies were running for like 50 weeks. There were people going week on week.
Yeah.
Right now, the number of weeks is not the barometer. It's the amount of box office that's become a barometer.
Absolutely.
But still, that really kind of goes to show that people are, as Indians, not just Hindi movie-going audiences, even regional language movie-going audiences, Telugu, Tamil, Punjabi. We have seen great, footfalls in cinemas and people going to cinemas in large numbers.
I love it. I mean, the Spider-Man example really puts things into perspective because it's a global film, right? It's not even like a local film. It's a global film. And I think it became the first film this year or in the last year to have 100 crore opening weekend. I think it was the only film that ended up having that for the year. I'm not sure if numbers on the Matrix are in, but I'm sure it's not bigger than Spider-Man.
No, not. And Spider-Man was the.
Right. And that's huge, right? There has to be some kind of a record, first of all. And then it also signals to a bigger shift, right? It's also about how global stories are being accessed in India. Now, I want to ask you this. And while it's very easy for us in the English-speaking world to be like, hey, we really understand the Marvel and the MCU, and that's something that we really own, and we are mega nerds and fans, and we'll do. But the numbers are being brought in by the guy who's watching Spider-Man No Way Home in Telugu.
Correct.
And the guy who's watching it in Tamil or dubbed versions, right? Help us break down, Vivek, how you approach marketing a big movie like this, right? Or taking a big movie like this, not just marketing, but taking a big movie. And if you can, give us your shorthand on this, what are the things you keep in mind when you do something like this, when you put it together, like the anatomy of this success?
Right. No, I think it's a very interesting question, Vineet. And, it is something that as a studio, we have learned over time that, audiences like to watch content in the language that they understand,
Mhm.
right? In the past, obviously, when there were not enough screens, content used to play out in English, and that was that.
Right.
Now, after that, subsequently, what we have learned is that when we dub the film, the reach of the film grows exponentially. We are able to kind of reach out to audiences in places like Chikmagalur,
Mhm.
in places like Dindigul, in smaller towns up north or anywhere else. I'm saying the fact of the matter is that we can make the content accessible.
Mhm.
And we have seen that even with Spider-Man is that, close to 40% of our box office has come from regional languages.
Right.
And I think what is important here is that, when we are making the content accessible, it cannot just be a translation. It has to be something that is part of their colloquial day-to-day lingo.
Mhm.
And therefore, a lot of effort is put into how the dubbing is done, what voices are chosen, the script per se, how to kind of localize the jokes, how to make them relevant as well.
Mhm.
And obviously, the content itself then, does its part. So backed with obviously the marketing aspect of it, and I think marketing plays a very strong role in trying to create, appeal for content that you put out and ensures that maximum people get excited by the content that they're about to watch on the big screen. So from a marketing perspective, obviously, we have now been able to ensure that we get into the skin of the local audiences. And in this particular instance, we obviously went completely all out where we went on to cricket, live cricket, and we ensured that, Spider-Man was available there. We did print communication in close to 30 cities. We obviously did outdoor in about 20 cities.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that we did largely was that we used, regional influencers.
Right.
And, we've seen that influencers and social media play a huge role. In fact, one of the biggest influencers as far as for Hindi audiences is, we sent him to LA for,
Ashish Chanchlani.
for the Ashish Chanchlani for
Right.
the premiere. That got us huge amount of buzz because having seen the film before the world and to share his, the euphoria that he went through and the word of mouth that kind of emanated from there
Right.
really helped us, here. So using and working with influencers across has given us the ability to, again, make it connect with audiences locally
Right.
because they find comfort in what influencers say. Like your audience finds comfort in what you say.
Right.
So when you say something, it means a lot to them. So similarly, when they are excited by the content that we put out and they share it with their followers, it translates into box office and we have seen that. And so, strategically being able to do that. Plus also being able to kind of get brands into the mix,
Right.
the power of brands to ensure that we are able to get the added visibility that helps us. Also, it kind of drives saliency for the film, but at the same time, it also helps the brand. So it's a win-win proposition. So we had brands like Raw Pressry,
Mhm.
where, on the juice bottles, we had Spider-Man
Right.
and, the film, etc., imprinted on it. We had Asus computers, we had Pizza Hut, and we had very interesting, hoardings of Pizza Hut, with Spider-Man on one hoarding and the web on the other hoarding and, connecting the messaging, of Pizza Hut. So I think that really kind of helped us. And one of the other important things is, unlike local Hindi movies where the star goes and makes visits, for us, it was Spider-Man. So we
Right.
really took him to like 8 cities, and 8 malls for meet and greets and ensured that, there was consumer engagement at a different level because it is a money can't buy experience when you stand with Spider-Man and take a photograph and then you put it on your social media
Absolutely.
and talk about it and say that, I took a photo
I
and,
met Spider-Man.
I'm not sure about exactly. And it's not only kids, it's like even personally me, we had a kind of a get together and, he was there and there was a huge line
Right. Of
for
course.
even people, of older ages to be able to get clicked with Spider-Man. So I think it's this whole event feel and this whole celebration of this particular phenomena really helped us because that creates the urgency for people to go and watch it day one. Like just to give you an interesting example, when we started the advance bookings for Spider-Man, first we started as like a 7 o'clock show in the morning because everybody said, "Acha, 7 baje chalu karte hain."
Right.
It got sold out within minutes. Then we started a 6:15 show. That got sold out within minutes. Then we started a 5:15 show. That got sold out within minutes. And then finally we started like a 4 a.m. show.
Oh, wow.
An IMAX, which again got sold out. So, and beyond that, now we couldn't because the theater operators had to go home sometime to sleep and change. Right? So, so the fact of the matter is that we exhausted every single time available to us to be able to ensure that people could come to cinemas and experience this phenomenon on the big screen. So to your point, I think, having done this now successfully for so many years, dubbing does play a very, very important role. Strong marketing to make the content relevant and build urgency really helps us. And we have seen the results where, the box office from language versions has been growing year on year. In some cases, in some films, it almost is also 50-50, So to that extent, I think there's a huge benefit in making the content relevant for audiences across India.
Love it. Thank you so much for that very, very detailed and very patient. I think that just sounded insane. I mean, as someone who works in the entertainment marketing field, it just sounds thought through. It sounds on point. It sounds like a scalable plan right from Bombay to Chikmagalur. Like you said, the excitement of Spider-Man going everywhere. It sounds insane. I have two quick follow-ups on this, and then I'm sure I will talk about local stuff that you're doing and the other things as well. But did the team expect it to this degree? I think there was a 32 crore opening, a 103 crore weekend. Was that sort of expected? Like, did you get to match that was close to this, or?
Like I started the entire conversation by saying this, the business is unpredictable.
Right.
Our numbers, when we had obviously were planning for the release of Spider-Man, we were hoping that we would probably be equal to the previous Spider-Man, Far From Home, because the pandemic was there, and we obviously had cinemas that were impacted. Like Maharashtra was running at 50%,
right,
and in some markets there were some night curfews, etc. So, having said that, I think we were slightly conservative in our estimation, but we were sure that at least we would do the numbers of. And I think, that confidence actually came to us back in October when cinemas actually opened.
Right.
We released Venom. And at that point in time, Hollywood actually led the way for exhibition to give them the confidence that people are coming back to cinemas, especially for good content.
Right.
There were films like Shang-Chi, there was
Dune,
No Time to Die, there was Venom, which was our own film, and then we released Ghostbusters. So, that Venom and, the films that we released and the other films that released gave us the confidence that, people are coming back to cinemas. Because like I said, it is what daily khurak hai, or unki weekly khurak hai. They need it. It is something that was very evident when even the local films started kind of playing out, when Suryavanshi released and, we saw what happened at the box office. So I think the point here is that gave us a little bit of confidence that yes, if the content is good, people are going to come. But to your point, whether we expected that phenomenal thing. Again, we got an inkling when advances were opened in other countries. Other countries, they opened advances on 29th of November.
Right.
And our film was releasing on 16th of December. And what we saw, the way the phenomenon exploded in US, in Mexico, in Russia, advances of unimaginable levels, Again, that gave us a little bit of confidence that, the content is exciting and people are definitely waiting for it. There's huge anticipation. And that we really got, proof of that when we opened advances on the Sunday before the release. So to your point that, we expected it to do as much as Far From Home, but we didn't realize that it would breathe Far From Home in the first weekend itself.
Insane, right?
So that was like a huge number for us, and we are currently at 265 crores plus and counting in terms of gross box office. So I think it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's absolute testament to storytelling, to fan service. I watched it. It was great. My follow-up question actually is something that you already kind of answered, right? But what I wanted to check with you was, did you think this kind of revenge movie watching will continue? But you kind of answered that, so we'll move past it. What I'm going to do is go into a quick break and come back and talk about your 2022 slate, how you're going about picking stories, what is the nature what do you think about the groundswell of talent that we have right now in the movie making business? So
Sure.
right after
Sure.
these messages with Vivek Krishnani, don't go anywhere. This is Storytellers and Story Sellers.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
And we're back. We're talking to Mr. Vivek Krishnani, Managing Director, Sony Pictures Films India. We were discussing SPI's slate for the coming year right now. There's some very interesting stuff on this. There's comedy helmed by Balwinder Singh Janjua called Tera Kya Hoga Lovely. There is action comedies by Shabir Khan with Nikamma. There's something that's called Dive. That's an underwater thriller, which sounds very interesting. But before we get into talking about these titles specifically, I want to bring Vivek in. Vivek, how are you going about picking and funding stories here? What is the guiding mantra? What are you looking at putting out there? And again, I think, is it a continuation of what the studio has done since 2018, or is there a new direction that you're looking at? I'd love to get your opening notes on your slate for 2022 and what you're expecting out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Vineet. And I think with regards to local content, like I said a little earlier, that, people have been exposed to a lot of content. And because of that, the consumer viewing habits and the kind of content that appeals to them, has changed or is undergoing a change as we speak. As far as our lineup is concerned, we obviously, as part of our overall strategy, one of the biggest things that we are focusing on is ensuring content that's differentiated. Mm-hmm. It's not, run-of-the-mill content, and which is why the films that you mentioned, are films that, have a very differentiated offering from a content point of view. We've obviously, as a studio, we focus on the 3 C's, which are very important. The first C being content, the second C being cast, and the third C being cost. And to ensure that, these 3 C's, if you are able to get the balance right, you are able to get, your money's back. And I think at the end of the day, as long as, we create content that people come to cinema for, it will always end up, making money.
Absolutely love it. Like content, cast and cost. Absolutely love it. It's a great framework but please go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, what we basically focus on is the first C, which is content. Because having the content in place is extremely important, which is why when you see our lineup of films that we have, we have a action thriller by the title of Nikamma, mm-hmm. which is being directed by Sabir Khan. Sabir is the director who launched Tiger and in Heropanti and then Baghi. And now, we've got this new boy called Abhimanyu Dasani, mm-hmm. Who has done a phenomenal job in the film. And one of the key things as a studio that we are doing, Vineet, is that we are fueling the talent ecosystem. We are infusing the ecosystem with fresh talent when it comes, whether it's actors, whether it is writers, whether it is directors. And if you see our, a slate of films that we have, like you spoke about Tera Kya Hoga Lovely, which is being directed by Bali Janjua, his first directorial film starring Randeep and Ilyana, which tackles the color bias in India. Right. Again, a comedy take at it. So something that, people are have not seen before. Mm-hmm. Even then, when we're talking about Dive, which you spoke about, which is in co-production with Ram Madhwani Films. Again, we've got a new director on board. Again, the idea is to push the envelope with the content as well as, support the talent ecosystem with a new director whose strength is in ad film making. And now obviously we see that as far as motion picture is concerned. Right. So in coming to writing talent or directing, we've got a film called Sale Ashik, where Siddharth and Garima, who were the writers of Ram Leela, of, Toileting, Prem Katha, Padmavat, etc. They are now directing a film for us.
Right.
So the idea is that we are fueling the ecosystem of talent, plus focusing on, like I said, the first C, which is important, which is on content, trying to differentiate and ensure that we have a mix of content. We have seen that genres that work in cinema that were used to work earlier, perhaps, we're seeing a little bit of a change in terms of what genres are working, right? And we have seen that, families tend to go to cinema, so family comedies do work. So we've got a film called Aankh Micholi,
Right.
Which is directed by Umesh Shukla, who directed 102 Not Out for us. And, it's an ensemble comedy, with Paresh Rawal and Sharman and Abhishek Banerjee and Mrinal Thakur and, Divya Datta and Vijay Raz and Abhimanyu Dasani.
Sounds like an
So
ensemble
it's like
cast.
it's a huge, fun film.
Right.
Again, something that, we were actually looking to release a year ago in Diwali, because it's the right Diwali film. But like I said, we have been looking at content very, very, with very, very closely to ensure that, people take that effort to come into cinemas or love to enjoy the content. One of the films that I didn't really, which is something that is again very close to us, is a film called Loop Lapeta,
Right.
which is with Taapsee Pannu and Tahir Raj Bhasin, which is going out on Netflix. And again, it's a remake of Run Lola Run,
Right.
Which is the German film, and it's an Indian adaptation of that. And again, very differentiated content. We've got a new director on board, again, an ad filmmaker who's brought about fantastic visual looks. When you see the trailer and when you see the film itself, it'll blow you in terms of the way it looks and the storytelling and the narrative of it also. Like I said, we are focusing on the C of the content, and then obviously the other two C's being very important,
Right.
in terms of cast and cost. But if you don't have the content right, you can have big cast and you can have big cost, and we have seen what happens.
Right.
To films like that,
Right.
right? So at the end of the day, we are,
Taking our
we are
lesson.
driven by the first C.
Of course.
We have to get people to see the C. That is important.
No, for sure. I think the noble intentions of the first C must also toe the line of the last C.
Correct.
That is, I think, the loop in which the C's exist. But thank you so much for that introduction to the slate.
Lovely.
All of those sound wonderful and exciting stories that will, be magical when they go up on screen. What I wanted to follow up, and while you were saying this, a thought that popped into my head was, being a global studio and now having, inroads and firmly in this massive Indian market as well, and seeing that the stories that come in here globally get the kind of reception that they do. What is the outlook on creating from India for the global stage? How do you think that reverse trade? And again, I mean, the easy examples now with Squid Game, everyone knows Squid Game, but it's not happened overnight, right? Like Korean cinema or Korean film has done this over the last 14, 15 years, so to speak, right? But what is the outlook, Vivek? What do you think, if we were to assess that situation, where do you think we stand? From how far away from a truly global Indian hit are we?
I think as far as storytelling is concerned, we Indians are great storytellers.
Of course.
And we obviously have to look at the power of our stories and ensure that, we are able to make it crossover. Now, that is where the challenge comes, right? One of the key things, again, like I mentioned earlier, is understanding audiences is very important. If I'm going to make a product for an audience which is going to be of a certain, diaspora or a certain kind of a demographic, or psychographic in that manner, we will have those people coming to buy the content, right? And at the same time, if we are able to understand what international audiences or, crossover audiences like, ensure that we create the content that basically can cross that boundary. Like for example, we have seen what Dangal has done in China, right? When we talk about box office, it is got the fancy of, Chinese movie going audiences, and because they could relate with it.
Right.
So I think movies are all about relatability. If you can make people relate to your content, connect with the content that we make, we will definitely see people coming to coming to cinemas in non-diaspora markets as well. And I think, so if you look at examples of say a Slumdog Millionaire,
right, of course,
which was actually technically at heart an Indian film,
sure,
but it was, produced and directed by, an international studio
right,
and an international director. But the story narrative could have come from India,
right, right,
and that is something that, is what I'm saying, that we are great storytellers. We can excite people, we can connect with audiences, but to make it relatable, we need to understand audiences and what can move them. And we are going to be seeing a lot of, as a studio, we are also focusing on taking Indian IP global.
Right.
And you will see, in the next year or so, when we talk about our future lineup, beyond the split that I just spoke about,
right,
that is one of our key focuses as well, is to ensure that we can, take content above and beyond, and, beyond the Indian diaspora into mainstream movie-going audiences across the globe.
Well, I'm just waiting to be like, that has to happen. This is something, especially after Parasite, right? I mean, Parasite felt like
Correct.
a tipping point for Korean culture as well, right? Like in that sense.
Correct.
Sure, Kate.
You've seen, I'm sorry to kind of, I'm just saying, like, for example, if you see what's happening to content, and, you got to, thank OTT for that,
right,
in the sense that because you're sitting at home and you're getting at the, flick of a button, Korean content, Spanish content, French content, Japanese content, the press of a button.
Right.
And right now, if you see, for example, we're talking about Squid Games, Korean TV series have caught the fancy of a lot of Indian audiences.
Absolutely. K-dramas, yeah, all these
K-dramas
shows,
and K-pop also is growing, right?
Absolutely.
As you see, BTS as a band is, youngsters in India are really kind of, grooving to their music and, loving what they've done and doing, for that matter. So I think if Korean drama can do that, if a Spanish web series can become global and again catch Indian imagination by fans, as well, why can't we do that? And I think also to that point, we are seeing a huge transition even within India. When you look at regional content, some of the highest rated movies on movie channels is dubbed Hindi content, and dubbed Telugu movies, Tamil movies dubbed in Hindi. Even at the box office now, we are seeing a huge number of people going for regional. Bahubali showed the way,
absolutely,
and it kind of showed that regional cinema has huge capability. And then we had films like KGF and recently Pushpa, that is basically got so I think to that point, we are ensuring that firstly we are focusing on making Indian films Indian. Then we got to make Indian films global, right? So I think we are succeeding in the first part of it, and the part 2 is not far away.
I think that's also the right approach in the authenticity of our stories and telling it the way we should be telling them as well. Right? I think it's very very interesting the way you put it there. I want to round this section off by asking you about your notes on how you think the Indian entertainment talent market has changed, especially in light of OTT, right? I think film production and top class film production, of course, is a very, it's a privilege to have your film produced, right? But now there are far more scripts out there. There are far more really qualified technical talent out there. Of course, acting talent and on-screen talent remains better trained now. But what are your notes on this, Vivek? How has this changed maybe in the last 5-7 years?
See, I think OTT, has been in the last 4-5 years has been a boon for content creators, in that sense that every storyteller, every writer always had the dream of his content being seen by audiences. Movies obviously is an expensive medium, and therefore to kind of be able to ensure that every movie gets a theatrical release probably is not possible, and therefore OTT made that possible, where content could be created and made available to people sitting at home. So for content creators, it has been a huge shot in the arm. In today's day and age, Vineet, any writer that you want, any cinematographer that you want, whether a makeup artist, costume designer, EPs, etc. you want are not available
Right.
because they are working on one or the other show for some or the other OTT platform. And, and I think it's a good thing because it's, generating huge employment, which is extremely important. At the end of the day, it is important for people to be able to earn a living doing what they love, which is fantastic. But on the other hand, I think what we need, the need of the hour, and something that we're seeing is that we need a little bit of more structured growth of new writers,
Right.
People who can think differently, think out of the box, structured training of people who are new directors. And I think there needs to be some kind of a formal structure. Right now, it is organized chaos, brouhaha. Everybody is part of this chaos, and it's organized in some form. And I think it's important for us, as a studio, also to bring in a certain amount of structure, and as an industry. Not only just as a studio, we need to cultivate new writing talent. Very important. Like I said, the first C. If you don't have the first C,
Right.
how will you get people to watch what? They're not coming to watch screens. They're coming to be regaled into storytelling, into a certain form of, imagination, escapism that they want to experience. And the writers form the crux of it. And, we have seen that regional cinema has great, writing, storytelling capability, and I think across languages, whether it is Hindi cinema, whether it is, we've seen Bengali cinema, the literature is very strong, and we're seeing, a lot of good content come from there. But we need some kind of a structure. We need, something which is basically, moving towards making this writing thing, cultivating great writing talent.
Sure.
Is extremely important. And, in this entire ecosystem, I think whether it is movie producers or OTT or everybody, I think needs to come together to, help build this professionally and, in a more structured format, because that is the way we'll see. If you see international storytelling, and you see the writing that is there in, like, if you see, a Squid Games, or you see anything else, that an Narcos or anything, the writing is what it is. Even comedies, which you've seen, whether you've seen like Schitt's Creek or Seinfeld, the writing of it is what is basically makes it a success. And
Absolutely.
and I think as a country, we need to get into that level, and cultivate writers and writing talent, and ensure that we build enough of an ecosystem for writers to thrive and new writers to take this as a serious profession. And
But do you think?
then
Do you think
we
it's
can
become?
go on. Yeah.
Do you think it's become better over the past few years? I mean, I'll give you
Yes.
an example. Like one of my very close friends quit his corporate job to start writing web series 5 years ago, and now he's a successful web series writer. Of course, he's talented and he's worked at it. But have you seen more opportunities come through? And I mean, all of this saying with completely agreeing that yes, absolutely. I think we need a more rigorous writer support program, if nothing. But it's become better, right?
Yeah, we have seen it become better, no? Like you rightly said, if your friend could take the chance of leaving his corporate job. Earlier, if you had to discuss somebody like 6 years ago or 7 years ago and say, hey, will you leave your job and become a writer?
It's a massive risk.
You like, are you my friend or what? So I think it's no longer, and also right now we are seeing lots of opportunities, like even in short form content, people are coming and there's great amount of great writing that you're seeing and you come from TVF and exactly, what, how that journey has been and so on and so forth. So I think the point here that I'm making is that, the opportunities are coming. People who are talented need to work hard to be able to grab them with both hands. And if the opportunity knocks at the door, you just need to kind of, welcome it. And I think that is what is happening right now, that you need to be able to, but it's also about Swami Chinmayananji has said that, how do you define luck? Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
Right.
People call it luck. And I think as writers, as content creators, we need to be prepared because the opportunity is coming.
Right.
And, if you are prepared, then you can get lucky. successful as you've kind of probably dreamt of. So yeah,
Love
I
it.
think it is very, very important, for us to be prepared. And which is why, I kept talking about the writer, fueling the writer ecosystem, because it's important
Mhm.
for our business to survive. Content is the base.
Love it. I'll pivot this to what is sort of my last segment, but last question. This is more about your journey and your time as a story seller, as we put it on this show. Right? I mean, this show is called Storytellers and
So
Story Sellers because it just kind of makes sense, right? The two sides of the coin.
yeah,
As a young executive myself as well, what I've noticed is people who came on from the first rung of B schools moving to entertainment, right? I think there is a lot of experience and learning that you've seen from the days of Wild Wild West to now. And now I think it's pretty straitjacketed and corporate in that sense, right? But
correct.
Vivek, I want you to tell me what would have been maybe 3 lessons you would have told yourself
Mm.
when you
Mm.
moved into entertainment as a young executive, that from what you know
Yeah,
now, as sort of
yeah,
giveaway lessons to yourself.
yeah. No, I think that's a very interesting question. And I always thought about what actually I would have done if I was not in entertainment
Right.
in that sense. And to be absolutely honest, I think one of the key lessons, for me, has been that since the time I graduated from college, I used to basically be on stage hosting events and basically doing kind of stuff on in terms of entertainment,
Right.
back in college, and the power of entertainment to impact people
Hmm.
was something that really caught my fancy, and I really believed in that, and therefore for me the focus was that I needed to get into entertainment.
Right.
Even when I was back in business school, at that point in time, there was only one entertainment company,
Hmm.
that was, I won't name it right now, but it was one of the most, it was a structured kind of entertainment company. We had tried to kind of get it to campus, and because of some unfortunate reasons, the company, went through a turbulent time and couldn't land up at the campus, and I was like, heartbroken,
Hmm.
because I was very, very focused on getting into entertainment. And in fact, as all youngsters, you tend to apply on all day one companies, day zero
Right.
companies, and you tend to kind of get into acha theek hai yaar, let's apply to Citibank, let's apply to this bank, let's apply to that bank,
Right.
let's apply to kuch bhi karte hain, let's apply to all of these companies, etc., etc., etc. And in fact, I got into one of the banks, as I had applied to a few.
That would have been a different
And
life completely.
exactly, right. And after, at the end of the interview, I was told that after I came out, that I've been selected, and
Hmm.
and that, because in placement, if you get a job, then
You're out of the
that's it.
process.
You
Yeah.
can't kind of you can't out of the process,
Yeah.
because you got to give others a chance. And I actually went back into the room, and I requested the hiring team there that please don't take me, because I have applied for this thing, out of this thing out of multiple applications,
Mhm.
but my heart is not in this, and I want to kind of do something that my kind of heart is calling out to, and
Mhm.
and I think they were not very happy with it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I said, I was very focused on getting into entertainment,
Right.
and the closest thing then that to kind of entertainment at that point in time was advertising. And so then I kind of got my my first job in advertising,
Mhm.
which is Lintas.
Mhm.
And obviously the creative process of advertising really kind of excited me
Right.
and motivated me till I got a chance to get into Star 3 years later,
Mhm.
where obviously then media and entertainment kind of then was something that was just about kicking. Star was at a very unique position. It was an English channel at that point in time,
Right.
transitioning into becoming a Hindi channel.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to be part of the first team that kind of launched Kaun Banega Crorepati, and Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi,
Right.
and so on and so forth, and had a lot of fun doing that, because that's exactly where my heart was, what I wanted to do. And so I think one of the key lessons that, I'd like to kind of just talk about is being extremely, focused, about what you're passionate about. And I think, like I said earlier, when preparedness meets opportunity,
Right.
Things happen. And, and I think if you're prepared, opportunities will come your way. And I think that's what happened to me, and that's what I believe. And, it's important for people to, and at the end of the day, it's also, see, it's like this, obviously at certain points in time, a lot of youngsters might not have clarity,
Right.
in
Of
terms
course.
of, where you are. But, at the end of the day, you got to somewhere listen to what your inner calling is. And, if you really know as to, what you want to do, if entertainment is what you want to do and motivates you, and you work towards it, you will definitely get opportunities. And I've seen that in so many of my colleagues and so many of my peers and friends and everybody who's been in this business, that, one thing that unites all of them is the crazy passion for this business.
Absolutely.
And I think without that passion, and it's not only about our business, it's about any business, it's about your business, it's about even the, you got to have that crazy junoon, as they say. And, if you have it, then, rest assured the opportunity will come.
And I'm going to just say this because I'm one of those guys as well, but I'm sure you need passion for every business, but there is no other business like this business. As much as I see it, and the people that I meet working in this business, right? I mean, any other business where you have 98% of your projects probably failing to break even, people will stop. And people here come with a resolve and resilience and a new story and a bright, imagination, and try and, make things work. I think that's so beautiful.
Every Friday is a new Friday. And you are obviously, that is what kind of excites and motivates you, that what you did this Friday is different from what happened last Friday. And what you're going to do next Friday is different from what you did, the previous Friday. So this Friday. So it is the whole freshness of it. If I had to kind of compare myself, and, actually I shouldn't be comparing to any other business, but the monotonous nature of any other business versus the dynamism of this business, and the constant changing nature of this business, and the need to reinvent again and again and again and again, and create new kind of content, think fresh, think out of the box every time, is what, drives this business. So if any of these things excite you, then this is the business for you.
That's the best pitch that this business can have. Vivek, before I let you go, I have this one last question. You recently added, I mean, and again, I saw that you're on the board of an educational institution. I was like, I have to ask him about this and what you think of this. You're now an independent director on the Whistling Woods board. I think as of December is when you. Congratulations on that. What are you?
Thank you.
What are you expecting to do? Where, I mean, I feel like this is a passion project that you've taken on board to give back, but that's just me. Please tell us about this and what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I think, like you rightly said, Vineet, it's an opportunity for, people who've been in this business, to be able to give back, shared learnings, shared experiences, and what I spoke to you about, giving a professional touch to this ecosystem, and ensuring that we build and cultivate, talent across different verticals, whether it is writing, whether it's direction, whether it is production, whether it is, cinematography, whether it is anything else, and whether it's VFX, whether it's animation, I think the kind of verticals that now exist are a lot, but a structured setup for people to be exposed to that, and to ensure that there is a more professional way for it, like it exists in countries abroad. When there are schools set for, where there are film schools, there are film management schools, it's the business of movie schools. I'm saying there is lots of things that exist there, and as a country we are just kind of at that tipping point, and we're just seeing come out of the door. We're still not there. We have to run that race, and we have to ensure that from an India perspective, that we are able to, when you talk about schools in other parts of the world, why can't India be one of them.
Absolutely.
And we see people coming in from there. So I think there is an opportunity there. And, I think that is what really excites me. And, the ability to make a difference and giving back at the same time.
Love it. All the best with that stint. Thank you so much, Vivek. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, getting such prescient insights about the business from you. All the very best with the big slate for this year.
Thank you, Vineet. You get well soon, and I will. We hope to kind of see you in person sometime. Once this pandemic abates.
Absolutely.
So,
I hope
wishing
you feel
everybody.
better as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, wishing everybody a safe and a great year ahead, and all the best to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, that was Vivek Krishnani, Managing Director at Sony Pictures Films India, who spent an hour talking about his take on the dynamic business of dreams that we all seem to go to every Friday. That's it from me. This is Vineet Kanabar on the first episode of the next 101 episode number. That's it. Thank you for tuning in. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to the co-founder of Sleepy Owl Coffee, Arman Sood, about how he markets coffee to a generation that was raised on drinking tea. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav narrates an intriguing story that connects Shimla, rare books, and the American Declaration of Independence. On Agla Station Adulthood, meet writer Priyam Saha. She tells Ritasha and Ayushi about the overly romanced concept of life in the city. On a show about crypto, Rohan figures out what Web 3.0 is with the co-founder of Vault, Darshan Patija. And on Smarter with Sid, Siddharth takes us through the journey of the BlackBerry and what its future is. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. You can have a list of all of our shows at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.